monthly cooking class. And thank you so much for joining me. My name is Dana. For those of you who do not know me yet, my position here is as a functional and integrative dietitian, and I'm honored to work with the providers and the staff in this clinic. Today we're going to be making a Technicolor Slaw. It's a very simple recipe, but it brings a lot of flavor and color and beauty to your meals. Before I get started on that though, I always like to share something special that's come to mind. And today it's also something very simple, and that is I'm thinking about the outdoors and how healing it is to be outside. And for those of you who are not used to or in the habit of getting up and stepping outside first thing in the morning, I would encourage you to do that and take a few minutes to smell the air. Maybe you can even take a 10 or 15 minute walk and invigorate yourself, and maybe see a few neighbors and say hi, and get a new mindset for the day. I did that this morning before this presentation, and it did make a big difference. So I'm just going to share that little pearl with all of you today. And then when you come in, you can come into your kitchen ready to cook or do anything else that you need to do for the day with a better starting place or a foundation. As I always say, the energy that you bring into the kitchen is the energy that your food takes on. And so we want to have a positive energy force around us. And if you don't feel that way, that's okay. It's probably a good time to not cook. And it may be a better time to do some restorative yoga or call a friend. So today what we're making is this combination of beets and carrots. And the recipe calls for it says regular carrots, meaning like you would think orange carrots. And what I like to do is mix it all up. And I bought a bag of rainbow carrots, and then I picked out the purple ones that you can see here. And those are on this side of the bowl. Those are not the beets actually, which you think of as red. These are red or purple carrots. They're a little bit sweeter than the orange and confer much of the same health benefits. And then on the other side of the bowl, we have the yellow beet or golden beet. So I've really flip-flopped this on you, so you may not realize that we've got the two colors you would expect, but completely on the other side of the table. And so the golden beet is a little bit sweeter than the red beet. It doesn't quite have that same earthy flavor, sort of like bell peppers, where the yellow bell pepper is sweeter than the green. Same kind of principle applies here. And so I just ran those through my food processor in advance on a thicker setting, and it was like a 5-second situation, and everything is uniform. So if you have a food processor or some way to shred evenly besides just trying to cut and chop, I do recommend it for this recipe, because part of what makes a food taste good is having all of the primary vegetables or ingredients the same shape or size. And that also makes it more visually appealing to us. When you take in something into your mouth, part of the enjoyment of eating is mouthfeel. And if you have odd shapes and different crunching, it can kind of throw things off, believe it or not. So this is a good way to start. And I have this little bit of lime in the middle, kind of like a flower, just because I did this a little bit in advance, and then I squeezed the fresh lime juice on top just to keep the vegetables from going brown or oxidizing as they interact with the air. And then I thought that was fun to just put the lime in there. So play around a little bit with your food too, and the presentation of it. We're going to take that out in terms of for the presentation part is over, and then we're going to actually make that functional. So what we're doing here is really called Here Today, here at Lifescape, here kind of in the bigger sense of things. We're doing a plant-forward way of eating. So everyone's saying plant-based. We used to say vegan because I've been doing this a long time and been in this field a long time. That was sort of the thing. And then it turned into plant-based. And now what I'm saying is plant-forward. And the reason why is because it doesn't mean you have to exclude animal products 100% from your diet. That's not the point. The point is that you really focus on 50 to 75% of your plate or your meals being plant-oriented. And then you pull in some proteins appropriately. So they may be plant-based proteins like legumes, or tofu or tempeh or something like that, or they may be something like wild-caught salmon or some wild-caught shrimp, or maybe even some grass-fed beef or some organic chicken. So I just wanted to clarify that, because a lot of people are getting a little, I think, overwhelmed with the idea of going completely onto vegetables as their primary fuel, and that's not really the point. It's just that we want to get you more engaged in the vegetable side of things, and the reason why is because there's so much interest and so much study that shows how it benefits our health. And some of the top benefits on that side, while we're talking about that, are cardiovascular benefits, especially in the realm of blood pressure. And we're going to talk about that more today because it relates to beets. So I'll dig into that just a minute. And then also it relates to having a healthy weight, which means that you're less inflamed. If you're less inflamed, you're less likely to have cardiovascular disease and or diabetes or pre-diabetes down the road. So there's tons of health benefits. Those are just a couple of the big things that we think about when we're eating. But food is truly our best medicine or our biggest downfall, depending on which type of food we choose, which side of the coin we jump into. I also did want to talk for just a minute about a few other benefits. One of them with plants that really comes to mind is it's full of fiber, especially prebiotic fiber, meaning fibers that we don't always digest completely, and the bacteria in our microbiome or our intestinal tract do. And so we're also providing fuel for that population, which is more DNA than we have as humans. And when the bacteria populations are balanced and happy and thriving, it all systemically comes around and we feel the same way. So that's another huge benefit, is looking at gut health in regards to a plant-forward diet. One of my favorite quotes, and many of you probably already heard this, but if you haven't, then hear it fresh, and if you have, embrace it as an old friend. And it's from Michael Pollan, who's a PhD researcher in Berkeley, California, and he says, eat food, not too much, mostly plants. And I think that mantra is something we could all write and put on our refrigerators as a reminder of where we're going with this. And if any of you are interested in his work, it's really fantastic. You can get any of his audiobooks and listen. He's very prolific in his writing, and I believe very interesting. So that's a side bit. If you're looking at Michael Pollan, Pollan, you can find him anywhere online. Okay, so with that being said, let's dive into making the dressing. I like to make the dressing first, so it gives us the dried spices a little bit of time to mix with the wet and create a little more flavor. So what we have here is I've mixed up the primary dried spices, which are sea salt, and I like the pink Himalayan salt, and then ground cumin and ground cinnamon, which one might not expect, but it really lends to the tone or the depth of the flavor. And then I didn't put any cayenne pepper because I didn't have any, and I also tend to not like spicy, so the staff here is not going to get a spicy or slaw, but they won't mind, I promise you. So those things are all in here, and I'm just going to swirl them together to mix it up, and that's kind of fun. You can also use a fork if you want. And so the spices are in here first. That's a tip that I have, is blending your spices all at once before you add them to the wet ingredients creates a more thorough mixture. So it's just a little side thing that you can do. And then we're going to mix in the wet stuff. So we'll go in order of the recipe. So this is just organic unsalted tahini, and this brand is at Sprouts, as you can see, and it's very liquidy. And so I didn't bring any water into this recipe. It does call for some. If you buy tahini from a different brand, it may be a lot thicker, and so you may need to add some water, but this is very liquidy on its own. And I'm doubling this recipe because I want the staff to be able, all of our staff, to have some today. So it calls for a 1/4 cup, and I'm just kind of doing the Dana measurement system. If you have one of your own, you probably won't have the Dana one, but you can have one similar, and you can just measure it appropriately. So I'm going to kind of aiming for about a 1/2 cup here. It's probably a bit more than that, but you can see how it's just dripping off the spoon. So this is already dressing consistency. And tahini is just made from crushed sesame seeds. And so because of that, it's got a good amount of protein in it. 3 tablespoons of tahini will give you 9 grams of protein. So there's your plant-based protein. So, you know, again, you could serve this dish with some animal protein in it, or you could just say, hey, you know what, I've got tahini. Also, we're gonna add some pistachios, and I'm gonna talk about those in a minute. So here I'm just adding some organic maple syrup. Again, it's from Sprouts. Everybody here knows I tend to be a huge Sprouts fan, and maybe one day they'll give me some stock. But in the meantime, let's just add the maple syrup. So it's a 1/4 teaspoon, that's not very much. And you can omit this, but you know what? I really don't recommend it. And the reason why, because I know some of you are like, oh Dana, but you tell us not to have sugar, like get the sugar out of your diet. Well, yes, I do, but you know what? This is part of layering the flavors for your taste. And the amount of maple syrup that you're gonna get once this dressing is spread over this huge volume of vegetables is going to be so minute. And the benefit of the flavor and the enhancement and the desire to make you eat more vegetables is probably, you know, good kind of come and go with all of it. So I'm adding that in because we want to do fast cooking. It's called fat, acid, salt, and sweet. And if you follow that acronym, especially when making dressings and sauces, they will turn out much better, trust me. So then what I want to do is squeeze in some fresh lemon. And this is a special little lemon. It's a Meyer lemon. And the Meyer lemons are more sweet. It's like almost like an orange and a lemon married together. And they're not always possible to find. They look a lot like just a regular lemon, but they're a lot smoother. They don't have that same bumpy texture. So when they do have Meyer lemons out, I always pick one up because they are a treat and something that isn't always available. So I'm just gonna slice this in half, and you can see it looks just like a regular lemon. And then take your citrus squeeze. If you don't have one, I do recommend getting one because it makes life easier, it strains out the seeds, and it's more fun. And it's something that other people who are helping you can do, especially if you have young children or mid children, teens. So you just put it in here, and this is calling for 2 tablespoons. And again, we're doubling the recipe, so I'm just gonna go ahead and squeeze the whole lemon in here. And then I just tip it to make sure that I've got all the goodness out of it. And then we set that aside. And mix it up. See how we would make this dressing way too thin if we added some extra water. And I don't want it to be that thin because these are thicker vegetables, so they can take the thicker dressing. Okay, actually, you know what, as I speak, it does look like it's thickening up on me. So I am gonna need to add some water to this before we mix it all up. So we'll do that in just a minute. All right, so with that being said, I wanted to put together the salad itself. And so we're gonna use this decorative bowl and mix in the 2 different vegetables that we're talking about. And I like to use tongs more than spoons sometimes because you can actually grab and flip. And this is what the really fantastic chefs do. And I've learned that from watching them. So if you have some tongs and you want to try this out, you might find that the tong becomes your friend and one of your favorites moving forward. Okay, so now we've got a nice blend, and I need a little bit of water, and so I have an assistant today, thank goodness, and she's going to just give you a quick visual while I run and get some water, and I'll be right back. I'm back, everyone. Thank you so much for getting a gander at what I've got going on here. And so I'm just adding some filtered water into the dressing. And then we're just gonna mix that up. And I think what happened is the maple syrup caused the tahini to thicken, because I'm seeing that in here. So we're just gonna thin it back out. You see how it responds nicely to the dash of water. And this is all non-dairy, so anybody who is worrying about a dairy allergy or sensitivity, or just prefers not to have dairy in their diet, this is a nice creamy dressing that doesn't have the dairy component to it. And this is also, tahini can be used in different sauces and for hot vegetables. And then you can also use it in dips, and most people know tahini for its use in hummus. And the benefits of having hummus around are pretty good. I'm just gonna keep adding a smidge more so we can make it just a smidge thinner. Here we go. And while I'm doing this, I wanna talk about tahini a bit. As I said, it has protein in it because it comes from a seed, and it's antioxidant rich. It's good for heart health, and it contains zinc and selenium. Zinc is what we're all trying to get enough of these days to keep our immune systems boosted, and selenium is an antioxidant, so that always is helpful. And then I want to talk about beets as well, and I'll do that while I'm finishing off the dressing. So with that being said, we've got a nice creamy thick dressing here, and then I'm going to just add it to the vegetable dish. And you can even dip fresh raw veggies into something like this. You can go on the sweeter side, and you can roll some medjool dates in here and put them in the refrigerator and let it get hard, and make that a fun dessert kind of treat that's still healthy. Okay, so we've got that going on. And you know what, I think I am gonna switch over and use the spoon on this one now that we've got the vegetables all blended. And I'm just mixing this up so that the shredded vegetables are coated nicely. And make sure when you have a bowl, you've got a big enough bowl like I do here so that you can truly mix it and don't make the mistake which I have in the past, which is using the vegetables in a smaller bowl and having trouble mixing it. So you can see there everything's starting to get really nicely coated. And once we've got this done, we're going to mix in some of the goodies, and that includes raisins. You can omit these if you don't want that, or you can use a organic cranberry. These are golden raisins, and they're nice and big and plump looking. And I've sampled a few earlier, and I have to tell you they're really delicious. So this makes the dish a little sweeter, and we can blend that in. And you can use the regular red grape raisins if you like, or you can even use some currants, some little tiny black currants. But this is kind of what makes the mouth pop when you have these. So we've got that going on. And then once you've mixed those all in, you're going to want to switch over and add your fresh herbs. The recipe calls for mint or basil, and I actually purchased the Thai basil, which is a different variety of basil and a little bit different flavor. So you can do that, and as you can see in here, there's some little flowers, and you can eat those. You don't need to throw them out. That's fine. You can eat the whole thing in here. You can eat the stems and the flowers. And so what I'm doing is I'm just doing a rough chop back and forth. You can see how I hold down the front of the blade, and then don't scrape with the blade. Turn it over if you want to gather it together, and then come in from a different angle. So So this creates a more rocking motion, because really the blade is only cutting on one side. And so if you come around from different angles, and you can see how everything is chopping up into a uniform shape. And then what you can do is just gently, we're not scraping, we're just using it as a tool. And then you can sprinkle it on top of your salad. So that way you've added that flair. And adding fresh herbs and spices is a great way to boost the nutritional value of your food. They're rich in antioxidants. And then this is, I said I was going to come back to the pistachios. You can buy these already shelled. Try to get them unsalted so that it doesn't add too much sodium to your diet if you're watching that. I purchased the shelled ones, and I decided to do it that way because I felt like it would be meditative and sort of therapeutic to open up each shell on its own and take the time to think. We spend so much time thinking, we can easily do something else at the same time, and maybe get the thinking to be a little more grounded and centered and peaceful. So I was busy thinking and shelling. And then if you're serving the dish, you would add these right away to make a really nice crunch. And a little bit of fun colors coming up here because they're a little bit purple. And voila, there you go. You have a Technicolor Slaw that is so packed with nutrients and rich in fibers and protein that this is enough to be a full meal if you want. Maybe not for everyone, but a lot of people could use this as a lunch meal and feel quite satisfied. So with that being said, I did want to circle back to the beets. And the reason why is because beets are a natural source of nitric oxide. And that's not nitrous oxide, which you get at the dentist. That's the happy gas. But nitric oxide, which is what helps dilate the smooth muscles inside your blood vessels and helps open up the cardiovascular system for improved blood flow. When that happens, your blood pressure can go down because there's more volume for the blood to flow through. So beets are a really good natural way to improve your blood pressure and cardiovascular health overall. And for those of you who are more athletic oriented and active, there's studies that have shown that drinking beet juice and eating beets on a regular basis improves athletic performance. And the reason why is because you have better blood flow. So you're getting increased nutrients to the muscles, more glucose for the muscles to use and keep you fast and furious when you're out there. And also to flush away all of the lactic acid and byproducts of exercise afterwards. So it has benefits in that regard too. And all of these vegetables have a lot of things in common. They're anti-inflammatory and anti-cancer. And if any of you have seen me, I've probably given you this handout, and it's a Phytonutrient Spectrum Foods. It's reminding you to eat every single color of the rainbow each day. And so I ask people to try for 2 colors per meal. And it's not that hard to do. Even if you're having eggs, you can easily put some microgreens and some like arugula microgreens and some red tomato. You've got 2 vegetables and 2 colors. It took 2 seconds. So that's just a quick way, but this gives you the idea of how many benefits are associated, and almost everything on here says anti-cancer, anti-inflammatory. So not so bad. And then the other side of this talks about how many servings we need a day, 9 to 13. Well, half a cup is a serving if it's cooked, and 1 cup of raw. So this could easily end up being 3 or 4 servings if you had a portion of this dish. And then knowing your phytonutrient sources, meaning like get lots of color. That's where phytonutrients come from. And then eating your rainbow, varying your choices, and getting creative with things. So I just wanted to point this out because it really does make a tremendous difference. I just spoke with a patient yesterday who had high cholesterol, wanted to try to reduce it naturally before she turned to medication. She changed to a plant-forward diet, and within, I think she said 3 months, and forgive me if she's listening and I get this wrong, it was not that long of a time, maybe 6 months at the most. She went back and had her blood tested, and she was 100 points lower on her total cholesterol, just from having a plant-forward diet mindset. So it does work, it is real, and it does feel really good to to include more of what nature provides us with. So with that being said, I think we're at the end of our session today, and I so thank you for joining me and bearing with me as I had to step out for a moment and come back in. That is part of cooking, where we don't always know what's going to happen next, and we just flow with it. So with that being said, we'll have another edition of this Healthy Kitchens, Healthy Lives class next month. Look for the advertisement. There'll be a recipe to download, and I'll be here to host you and guide you through the next adventure. Until then, be well.